Hi, forensics friends. Welcome to Humans of Forensics podcast. This is Dr.
Lamparter.
Lamparter, and then she's here. She's a professor here at UTM for forensics chemistry. Okay, so I know that you have graduated from this campus. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, because side story, I kind of googled your name up and I saw a report that you wrote for when you were in undergrad.
Really?
Yeah, so that's how I knew that you are from this campus, but I was not sure. But okay, so she graduated from this campus for biochemistry. Is that correct?
I did a forensic biology specialist and a chemistry major.
Oh, okay, forensic. Okay, and then she went on to Queen's University to get her master's in biochemistry,
Yes.
right? And then a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology, right?
Yes.
Okay. I know that you've been on this campus for a long time. So I think my first question is, do you have any places on this campus that you find very relaxing or like you go there whenever you feel stressed?
Oh, this campus is so beautiful,
It
and
is.
it's actually changed quite a bit from when
Oh,
I was a student. This
yeah.
building didn't exist, and some of the other instructional buildings didn't exist.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of green space.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my favorite areas was walking along the path to the old North building that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
exist anymore.
Oh,
Uh,
did it just disappear?
I think it was like a one-story building,
Yeah.
and so that was taken down, I guess,
Oh, okay.
uh,
Oh,
and replaced with many of the new buildings that you see now.
yeah.
So the campus has changed quite a bit, but that was
Mm-hmm.
always a beautiful walk, and you would see deer.
Mm.
It's surrounded by trees and just nature, and it was beautiful,
Were
very
there
relaxing.
Were there more deers back in your day? Or because I don't really see many deers like nowadays,
Oh, okay.
but were there a lot of deers? Did you?
Yes, you would see them like frequently enough.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I
So,
think the population probably of UTM is
yeah,
grown quite a bit since
yeah.
then as well, so maybe that's a factor.
Hmm. So, talking about your undergrad experience, how did you make the decision that you will go to UTM?
Oh, that's a good question. When when I was in high school,
Yeah.
CSI just started to be on
Oh,
TV,
yeah.
and I thought it was just the coolest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I decided to go into forensic science.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned, probably within the first few classes, was that forensic science is nothing like what you see on TV.
It's not, yeah.
But that made it so much more better,
Mm-hmm.
so much better.
Mm-hmm.
It included a lot of like systematic and rigorous
Mm-hmm.
testing,
Mm-hmm.
conclusions that you can draw from that. It's really a robust field that really is not captured
Mm-hmm.
on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I think what TV, like CSI does is
Yeah.
that it glamorizes it,
Yeah.
and you get results within the hour-long show, and that's not realistic.
Hmm. So is that the biggest difference between CSI and like real life forensics field? Because I do know like some of my friends that who will be watching this, I know a lot of people who is doing forensic chemistry because they're interested in those like TV shows. Is it not a good way to wanting this career if you want something that you see in CSI?
I think that's a perfectly fine way to get into the field. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I think as you move further along in the field, there are some like adjustments you make with your maybe perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the biggest ones for me in toxicology is that we are one piece of a much bigger puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's forensic pathologists, we have coroners. Sometimes there's chemistry, forensic chemistry is involved as well.
Mm-hmm.
There may be police.
Mm-hmm.
And we do the forensic testing in toxicology. We provide that data in terms of a report and interpretation to whoever it's going to. And they take that and they serve their own functions.
Mm-hmm.
So we are one piece of that much bigger puzzle, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't always get the end result.
I think that is kind of related to how science is interdisciplinary in nature. You can't really study chemistry not knowing physics or not knowing biology. So I do agree with you. And also adding on to that, like what's better? Is it better to specialize in one field, like maybe like forensic toxicology? And like in within forensic toxicology, there are a lot of like different aspects that you can focus on. But is that better, or is it better to have like a wide array of knowledge in every discipline?
Oh, I think for me personally, I would love to just learn about a lot of different areas. When about going into like a specific field, it helps to have specialized knowledge, but it's not. Uh, you don't have to go into something like toxicology being an expert already. There are opportunities for training and really checks and balances to ensure that you have the appropriate level of knowledge and that you can articulate that in a manner that's needed for that kind of work.
In your graduate studies, do you think that you learned a lot that you are using right now and in your job as a forensic toxicologist?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, two
Okay.
main areas that stand out for me are reviewing the scientific literatures, so learning how to identify papers to answer a research question, using your skills to critically evaluate them. You have to attach weight to some versus others. So which ones are you going to rely upon and why? And then the other area is general communication skills, because not only do you have to have that scientific foundation, but you need to be able to explain that in a clear and understandable manner to people who are not experts in your field.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's kind of related to your job as a witness expert, expert witness. Have you ever testified in court?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you feel about that? Is it stressful or do you like it? And like, what are the challenges?
Right. Yeah. Expert witness testimony for me, it does feel stressful. You're there, you're serving a very important function, and has a lot of importance to it. The first time I testified, I was so nervous. My mouth was completely dry. It felt like I had eaten up an entire box of cotton balls. It was a coroner's inquest that I testified in. And I got through it. I did a good job. The first few times you go to testify, it's reviewed by somebody in the field, and they give you feedback. And it's an opportunity to kind of apply all of the work that you've done up to that point and improve upon the communication skills. I think what's most important is that the communication skills is like a constant process. It's always good to practice and gain that exposure. For me as an undergrad, presentations were my least favorite thing.
See?
Yeah. I would go and give presentations. My voice would be shaky. I would not feel confident, and that kind of goes overall to your credibility.
Okay, then do you have any advice on people who struggle in presentation as an undergrad, or just how do you become better at communicating?
Right. I can really appreciate that struggle. I was there. And for me, what worked best was practice and exposure. The practice during classes, during research projects. In grad school, you get a lot of practice presenting your research at lab meetings, at conferences. What I also did to practice was work at career services, the career center here, as a work study student, and that gave me more practice at talking to people without having practiced what I was going to say. That was something I did at Queen's as well. I volunteered at career services, and I ran resume and cover letter appointments as well as workshops. So lots of opportunities to practice and really refine and develop those skills.
As an undergrad, there are a lot of things that you need to balance. You need to get good grades. You need like experiences. You might want to have like research experience. So out of those three things, so like real life work experience, grades, and research experience, which one do you think is the most, like which one should we focus on?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think that like each of those has merits, and ideally you want to do a little bit of everything. I also did a research opportunity program, one of the courses, the ROP courses, over the summer, in between maybe my third and my fourth year. Or I did 5 years between my fourth and my fifth year, one of those ones. And that was a great introduction to research, and it reinforced those ideas that I had, that was an area I wanted to pursue. I wanted to continue on in my research. It was with Dr. Prosser, and he was an excellent resource.
Oh, Scott Prosser.
Yeah.
Oh, the protein. Oh.
Yep. Oh. Yes. So he was fantastic. And yeah, I did that over the summer. I had work experience at career services, as well as do your best in your courses.
Yeah.
But what I think is important is that the experiences that you have don't necessarily have to be paid experiences. That volunteer experience, that course experience, the projects that you have in courses, those all contribute to that overall narrative, highlighting your skills and abilities when you move on to grad studies or move on to a job. Career services or career centers, the names are different between the two universities, but they are an excellent resource at helping you identify those skills and abilities that you have, and also using evidence to distinguish your specific experience from other students.
You mentioned about you kind of realized that you're okay with doing research while you were doing ROP. It might be too philosophical, but I've been asking like anyone that I can, how do you know you like something? Because everyone says you just do what you want to do, but how do you know what you want? How did you know you wanted research?
Right. Oh, that is a very high level question.
Yeah.
I think for me, when I find myself thinking about whatever that is when I'm not doing it. So if I'm thinking about a research problem when I'm cooking dinner or out for a walk or I'm trying to troubleshoot something, I find that those are the areas that I'm really interested in, because it doesn't feel like work at that point. It's something that I don't mind doing in my off time. So I kind of recognize that that's something I enjoy.
That's a really good advice. I think it's like, because like many people just tell me like, you just know when you know it. And then that was kind of not like the practical answer that I've been wanting. But yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so talking about your graduate studies, I kind of mentioned before this recording, but there are numbers of different programs that you can get in as a person that you want forensics chemistry as your final career. There's like analytical chemistry, you can do like pharmacology, you can do many types, different kinds of chemistry. Why did you choose your master's program? And then do you think that helps your job as a forensic toxicologist?
Right. Yeah. Lots of layers in there. Yeah. So for me, I didn't go into it thinking I would necessarily end up in forensic science.
Oh, okay.
I identified my program based on the interest I had during undergrad. So I had done the forensic biology specialist, so I knew I liked aspects of biology. There were parts of chemistry that I really liked as well. So I ended up choosing something related kind of to both in biochemistry. It was a cancer research lab at Queen's, and it incorporated aspects of both. So it was really the project that drew me into the specific area.
What project was it?
So it was trying to understand the mechanisms contributing to breast cancer. So we looked in the lab at specific pathways, genes and proteins that were involved, trying to understand their role in BRCA1 type breast cancer.
What are your advice on choosing graduate program?
But at CFS, like there is a diversity in people's backgrounds that come into talks. Ooh. So there are some people who've come from biology and physics. Chemistry is a prominent one. So I think there is that diversity. And probably the reason for that is that the skills that you develop as part of those programs are really transferable. So learning how to review the literature, how to articulate your opinion, like why do you think something versus not something else? Designing experiments, like the scientific method is pretty prominent in there. And those themes are there in those many programs.
So it really depends on what you are interested in. And then like the skills that you learn in the graduate programs, like it's translatable. So you just need to choose a project that you're interested in.
Yeah, my personal opinion is that I think you will succeed if you're interested. It will feel like work if you're doing something that you're not as interested in.
Okay, and then also talk about your career in CFS. Can you explain maybe to a first year student who like doesn't really know about CFS or forensics work? Can you explain to them what your day-to-day life looks like?
Sure. As a toxicology scientist, The main responsibilities are to direct testing for casework. So we have our CFS performs forensic toxicology testing for impaired driving, death investigation cases, homicides, sexual assaults, for example. So in those cases, you will have to determine what the scope of testing is. You'll manage that case, provide your interpretation, and author a final report. There's also elements of court testimony based on those reports, as well as research and teaching.
So are there really a lot of writings?
For reports?
Yeah.
It's that is the bulk of what you do. Yeah, there's a lot of reports to write, but the amount of writing can vary. Some are more like they may be more condensed, or others might have to elaborate more.
Do you think that if it's a person who doesn't really like reading or writing, will that not be a good starting point? Someone who wants to get into forensics field.
I don't think that's a barrier. No, there's a lot of space within toxicology for different interests. If you are more interested in the lab component and you want to run samples, then the lab side might be the best place for you to start. If you're interested in literature review, interpretation, then the scientist side, where I came from, is a greater focus. And even within the scientist role, there are different kinds of reports. So there are ones that are more like high-level summaries of data, and others that are more interpretive.
Oh, so within CFS, there are like different roles.
Yes.
So it's not just people who run samples.
Exactly.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. For anyone who's interested, I would highly encourage you to pull up previous job postings to get a good understanding of the various entry points into CFS. And in those, they do a pretty good job of describing their overall general duties, and they might be a good comparison.
That's good. Also, it's kind of related to what like my course work, because yesterday I took FSC 360, and then there was a forensic biologist. She made me think about different things. I learned that certain times science is uncertain, but your clients might make kind of pressure you to make it certain. How do you deal with that? And are there any frameworks that help you guide through that situation?
What's important is to, I guess, understand where your boundary is. So prior to going into like a meeting with somebody who's going to get your reports, to have a good understanding of what your interpretation is and how far you're willing to go based on that, and to not let any kind of external pressure change what that is. If there's new information that's introduced, you can consider that and how that might change your opinion. And I think that's part of being a responsible forensic practitioner. But it's really key not to extend past what is a reasonable interpretation.
And also, as a person who is a forensic toxicologist, do you have any words of advice or any things that you want to tell the next generation of forensic toxicologists?
I probably would say to maybe in preparation, just to reflect on yourself and identify areas that you might want to work on. For me, that like public speaking, communication was a big barrier, and I think it would be difficult to pursue employment in forensics, but also other areas. Like that's a fairly necessary skill. So reflect on what you like, what your perceived barriers are, and think about whether those are mutable or immutable, whether you can change them. And if they are, think about ways that you can change that.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. My last question for today is any choices that you made for your career. Do you have any choices that you really liked? And are there any choices that you kind of regret and you don't want to make it? If you go back in time, you want to change it.
Right. Choices that I really liked were probably to complement my science degree with like volunteer or work experience. So I loved working at a career center here at Career Services at Queen's. it was a great complement to a research project.
Mm-hmm.
Like with research, it can sometimes feel a bit lonely. Like you have your project, you spend a lot of time in the lab by yourself doing experiments. You have your research lab, and with science, and especially doing research, things don't work out a lot of the time. What working at Career Services did was give me a nice boost, because I would get to talk to students. We would have like 30 minutes together working on some aspect of their resume or their cover letter, and they would leave with something new that they didn't have before, either a new skill, a new description, like something that we were working on.
Yeah.
And so that felt really good to me, like a lot of quick victories that complemented the difficulties that you can experience in science.
Okay. Well, I think that's it for the interview. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you.